You are listening to the Beyond Believing podcast, special edition with Iconical Wear podcasts. There's a difference between knowing about God and knowing God. I spent most of my life in the first category, striving, performing, earning, and then divorce stripped everything away, and I had nothing left to offer but my brokenness. But what I thought was the end was actually the beginning, because in that wreckage, I found the real Jesus, not the one I was taught about, but the one who's been waiting for me all along. In this conversation with Iconical Wear, I'm sharing the candid, unfiltered story of going from Mormon theology to biblical truth, from survival mode to surrender, and from broken to whole. If you're rebuilding your identity post divorce as a Christian woman, after everything fell apart, this one is for you, my friend.
Well, that was supposed to fade out, but we haven't done this in a while, so welcome everybody to Iconical. And it's been a while since I have had a podcast. As you guys know, I've been working on an additional podcast called Top Dog Coverage. So we have been working. That's a little dog in the top. So that's the other logo. But if you guys have not yet subscribed, please follow us at Iconical Wear on all platforms and Iconical Show as well on Instagram. That was the only one that I couldn't get just Iconical. You guys know how it is on these platforms, social medias, where you want your specific name, but you just can't seem to get the exact name that you guys want. So you have to try to get it all through the board. So I got Iconical Wear all through the board, but I have two. One for the clothing line, which you guys see everywhere. So if you guys want to order, please go to iconicalwear.com for your, actually, I'll give you guys a little sneak peek there. The little fall brand. Fall brand is going well. And the burgundy, sherbet orange, the mustard yellow, the brown, and then you guys can get a awesome hoodie. So it is getting colder. You guys want to get a little bit more warmer, especially me in the Northeast. So welcome back. It's been since March. I've really been hustling and bustling to make sure that I do have things going on and more episodes coming out. The last one was with Who Thought We'd Be There podcast, which was a gem of a podcast. They hosted it. Shout outs to Q29 who did all of the audio, video, everything comes out crystal clear. Everything comes out amazingly. So if you guys ever need shorts or you need a studio, go to Q29 and go listen to Who Thought We'd Be There podcast, because they know exactly what they are doing. But we are here today with a new episode, new interview. And without further ado, let's just bring her on. This is Katie Ann Coaching. Katie Ann, how are you?
Hey, I am great. How are you?
Not too bad. Everything is going well. I stumbled upon your show, and your show was it's very intriguing. It's very uplifting. A lot of different things going on over there, and
Thank
it's
you.
mainly a platform that you like to help women, Christian women. Is that kind of the key there?
Divorced Christian woman is my specific
Ah,
target audience, but yeah, it's technically geared towards any Christian could benefit. Any person could technically benefit, but I'm specifically talking to divorced Christian women.
okay, cool. Whereabouts are you located? You said you're located in somewhere in Colorado, right?
Utah, close,
Utah. Okay, I knew it was
close to
mountainside.
Colorado, right next door in Utah. Yeah,
That is,
I
what's
was
the
in
weather like
Colorado for a
there?
while. I love it there. Yeah.
Okay.
Today, this last few days, it's been sunny, nice and fall warm, is what I would say. It's not really
What's fall
warm, but there's some
over
chill
there?
in the air. But it's sunny, so I'll take it. Well, it's been in the 60s, but there's a chill. It's been getting down below zero, or not below zero. Thank heavens we're not there yet. Below freezing, so it's just cooling down, and it's windy. It's perpetually windy here. So sun, we'll take the sun.
Yeah, we've had our fair share of windy yesterday. A lot of trees came down. A lot of before that it was I think 2 days of just straight rain, and then the wind came through, and it's that time of season. You know what I mean? Where you're gonna get some of the residual from the hurricanes that are down south, and they're gonna come up and they're gonna knock some things around, and 'tis the season, right?
Yeah, yeah, we do not get hurricane winds. we, do- we just get mountain winds.
Oof. Which is frigid. It's more frigid, isn't it?
It's intense sometimes, for sure. So,
Yeah.
not my favorite.
Yeah, I could imagine. So, what's the difference between like Colorado and Utah over there? Is there a big difference?
Not a ton. They're very similar. I will say the main difference is I'm in the Salt Lake Valley, so they get an inversion as soon as the air starts getting cold. Colorado gets like 300 days of sunshine a year. It's fantastic. It's so beautiful.
Really?
But weather-wise, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, no way. I would not have thought that. I remember I went to Denver. When I went to Denver, it was either
Mhm.
when you're in the it's weird. It's when you're in the shade, it's freezing. But when you're in the sun, you start
Mhm.
wet, and there's just like no median in between. It's one or the other.
It's very different. It's actually, I think Salt Lake is actually higher elevation than Denver, ironically, but
Hmm.
it's very similar.
Okay.
It's very similar weather-wise. Similar outdoors, mountains, access to that kind of thing.
Yeah, I can see that. So I wanna ask, what made you get into? I mean, it's a very specific niche that you're in, which is divorced Christian women, right? I mean, we could have went just Christian women, but we went divorced Christian women. There is something that you
Mhm.
feel like you are called to do, right? And I wonder how that kind of came about and what that path looked like for you.
Yeah, I guess you want the long version or the short version?
We can start with the short, and I can segue into long. That's fine.
There we go. There we go. So I started and specifically wanted to be working with divorced Christian women. I actually originally even specified over 40 because you're in a very specific season of life. Your kids are in a specific season of life for the most part. And anyway, I decided to just keep it open for everyone. But I went through a divorce 3 years ago, and I actually grew up Mormon. And after my divorce, I found Jesus of the Bible. I converted to Christianity and found there's quite a stigma around divorce in the Christian community. And it's not like it's acceptable in the Mormon community, but it's an entirely different level in the Christian world. And I was actually working at the time with families with children with special needs. I have a daughter who's deaf, and I had worked coaching and working in that community for quite a while. But seeing what divorced women were kind of going through in the Christian community as I came to know more about that, I was like, I really would like to work with this specific population instead. And it's heartbreaking and encouraging and inspiring all at the same time.
Yeah, I can see that. What
Yeah.
I want to dive into one question. Actually, I have two questions, but I'm going to start with one. Besides the, I want to say the hearing impaired aspect of raising, you said a daughter with that who's deaf, right? Are there other struggles
Yeah.
that come along with that?
With having a child who's deaf specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah, that's a whole nother bag of worms. Um, access to communication. Socialization is a big deal. So,
Okay.
you know how you and I can just meet on a street and you can overhear any conversation anywhere you're at. For children developing that have, they call it hearing loss or who are deaf or hard of hearing, they don't get that residual learning through overhearing conversations. So that's a huge aspect of just residual learning that children don't get who are in that specific um, you know, what's that world? Why can't I think of what that community? But access to just socialization it's very isolating for a child who can't just communicate with any person on the street or anywhere you're at.
Yeah, I could only imagine. Yeah, on top of that, like, is there more or fewer people that know sign language than you would have thought?
Fewer. It's interesting. It's interesting because I feel like sign language is the only like foreign language someone could take in high school and they would say that they know the language. Like if you took Spanish in high school, you would never be like, "Oh, I know Spanish." It's like I took Spanish in high school and I know how to like ask for water. you know?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
people who take American Sign Language in high school as a foreign language, they're like, "Oh, I know sign language," and then they like spell the alphabet. And it's like, could you imagine walking up to someone like maybe if you were in another country and they knew English and you're like, "Oh, I know Spanish," and starting to like say the alphabet in Spanish to them, they'd be like, "What are you doing?" Like that's embarrassing. So like those are the kind of interactions. Those are the kind of interactions about sign language that we have with the general population. It's
Yeah.
it's really not funny. It's by the time she just turned 17, so it's old at this point in her life. But she is very patient and very kind. And I will say the deaf community is very patient and kind if you are just attempting to learn. If you're just like trying to communicate and doing whatever you can to let them know you want to be able to engage with them and interact with them, it really means a lot. It really means a lot.
Yeah, I have a buddy named John. He lives in Washington DC, and I saw a lot of things happen.
Hmm.
A lot of people didn't take him seriously because he was deaf, and I've no,
Hmm.
I'll always say shout outs to John Roll because he always stayed on his own path, and he's a unique individual. I will say that he does his own thing. Um, I mean, he's a blast to hang out with, but he's always very random too. And I think not for nothing, he definitely, John. I know you're watching this. In any other way, you will be hearing this. I know that. So I will say, John, I know that you use it to your advantage too, because he will do some wild things sometimes, and we'll be in the middle of a conversation,
Hmm.
and he will like I'll be speaking to him. Now I know he's reading my lips. I am very much aware that he's reading my lips, and he
Hmm.
will just walk away, and I will pull him back, and I said, "You know that's rude. You know that's because he sees me and he's watching me, and he'll laugh." So, it's good to I haven't seen him in a while
Hmm.
since he's in DC now,
Hmm.
but shout outs to John Rule
Oh,
down in
DC is a
Washington DC.
whole nother level of the community.
Mhm.
Shout out to John.
Good old John.
It's a different level.
But I want to dive into the other aspect of uh what it's like to grow up uh Mormon. What does that look like? What did that look like? And what was that transition from Mormonism to Christianity, or should I say, uh, finding Jesus? Because that is a huge life change.
Hmm. Yeah, it was. I would say growing up, I didn't realize that I was being taught anything contrary to Christianity. Like you really believe that you're a Christian. Everything about the church is like, we're Christians. It's the Church of Jesus Christ. It's all about Christ. There's no delineation of like that in the Mormon culture. And my parents divorced when I was 4. My dad was a convert, He's very Italian. None of his so a convert means like he converted to Mormonism when he was like 18. So before he and my mom married, he none of the rest of his family is Mormon. My mom's family is very Mormon, like back to Wilford Woodruff, who's like the fourth prophet of the church, Mormon. So like it's deep. Our whole entire family identity, everything is the church there. And I will say there wasn't ever a time that I thought I would not be Mormon. So, like, I knew all of the counter arguments. Like in Christianity, you call it apologetics. In Mormonism, they don't use that word, but that's what it is. Like, I knew all of the apologetics about Mormonism. I know that's very interesting, right? So, like,
Yeah,
for
tell me more
Mormon
about
doctrine,
that.
all the counter, like, yeah, they just don't talk about apologetics. It's just not a term they use, which has been
Hmm.
really fun actually as I'm coming to learn about Christianity and as I'm coming to learn about the Bible, as I'm coming to learn about Jesus and what it actually does say. It's interesting to see how many things like actually connect. Now it makes so much sense for why Christianity doesn't recognize Mormons as Christians. But from a Mormon lens and perspective, you don't learn all those aspects of Christianity because you believe you're a Christian. So you were just taught everything from the perspective of Mormonism and that it connects to everything Christianity believes in because they think it's just believing in Christ. If that
Mm.
makes sense, which is, I mean, at the core, really what it's out about. But they technically don't even believe in the same Jesus, which is why Christians don't acknowledge them as Christians because it's not even the same Jesus. It completely changed his identity. So growing up as Mormon, I just was like just thought this is how everybody lived. But there's this very interesting like arrogance that you have in the Mormon culture because you have the truth. You're taught your whole entire life that you have the full truth because you have the Book of Mormon, which is the complete fullness. They treat the Book of Mormon kind of like Christians treat the New Testament to the Old Testament. Like it's like a fulfillment and completion of the Old Testament. Everything from the Old Testament prophecies are fulfilled in the New Testament, right? That's how they see the Book of Mormon. They see the Book of Mormon as a completion of the Bible. And because they have this modern day revelation, this newer, updated modern day, that's what they call it, modern day revelation, that they have more knowledge than the mainstream Christianity has. So it's
Mm.
this very arrogant kind of idea about your religion and your faith in contrast to the mainstream Christianity because they don't have that complete fullness of the Book of Mormon. And so you don't realize, but you're always constantly like judging and comparing yourself against Christianity or anybody else because it's sad that they don't have the full truth that you have. If that makes sense.
Yeah. What made you
Yeah.
find the, I'll say, capital T truth? What made you find that capital T truth? Or where was the turning point where you found that something wasn't working, or this, I don't know if this didn't feel right, or there was a change of direction somewhere, right? There was, your mind went through something and you went a different direction. Um, I'm gonna ask, what did that path look like, and where did it start?
Yeah, I would say it really started like 5 to 10 years before my divorce. Like I just knew something was off. You know how like you just feel like you're missing something, but you don't know what it is. And like all I ever wanted as a kid growing up was to be a wife and a mom. That's all I ever wanted. Like you would ask me when I was like even as 4 or 5 year old, people would say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I would say, "A mom. I just want to be a mom." And I was a mom and I was a wife and I was miserable. I was like, I had like 5 autoimmune diseases. I had, I was just like stressed to the max. I wasn't enjoying any part of motherhood and I wasn't enjoying any part of any of my life. And I was just going through the motions, checking up. Mormonism is very heavily legalistic. It's how Christianity would call it. It's a legalistic kind of mindset. There's a very strict, it's a works-based faith, not because it's a production of your faith, but because in order for you to really you really have to earn your way. Like that at the core, that's not how any Mormon would explain it. But understanding what you understand, right? What I understand now, that's exactly what the underlying message is, if that makes sense. So you never say no to what they call a calling because they don't have any paid clergy. There's no paid positions. Everything is volunteer in the organization. And so everyone in each ward is voluntarily serving their time, and they're really high demand leadership positions. And it's a lot. It's a lot that you're doing in addition to being a mom. I was homeschooling my oldest daughter at the time. It just is so much. And there's no connection to the real spirit, the big T truth. And so it just feels heavy because you can't do enough. So you're constantly trying to do more, thinking I should be going to the temple more. I should be praying more. I should be serving more. I should be more happy. And it's literally a life of should all over yourself. It's very heavy. And I just was like, this is everything I've asked for. And I am miserable. Like, I think I'm missing something, but I don't know what it is. And I never once thought it was my religion. I never once thought it was my belief system. And I heard all the arguments against Mormonism, how it was a cult, or how Joseph Smith was a plagiarist, or all of those things. And I understood them very well and could defend them very well, and I believed them very well. But I just had sincerely started praying, like, Lord, you've got to help me. Like, this can't really be it. And I would say I was married for 17 years, and for most of that time, we were in a not healthy relationship dynamic. So my marriage was never good. It wasn't like I had a support system at home. I eventually was called into this big leadership position, and I was like, you're going to have to help me because I don't have support at home. Like, I can't do that. So I don't know how that's going to work because I don't have this support from my husband to be able to do all of these things. And I was, like I said, I had like 5 autoimmune diseases. So I was super sick all the time. I was stressed all the time. I had a doctor that just be like, you're going to have to like reduce your stress. And I'm like, well, I can't give a child away. So I don't know what to
Fair.
do to reduce my stress. And yes, I'm like, I just had been sincerely praying, like, Lord, I know this isn't what you have for me. I know this isn't like marriage and family life. I know this isn't it, but I don't know what I'm missing. I went to therapy. I did like every self-help book I could find. I was like I got a life coach of my own. And that's kind of when the table started shifting for me, when I started to learn and understand how my thoughts and my beliefs about my life was impacting my life. And the more that I grew and the more that I developed and the more that I was working on myself, the bigger the gap between my husband and I became, because he wasn't interested in any of those things, bless his heart. But it just wasn't where he was or where he wanted to go or things that he wanted to do. He was really perfectly happy with what we had, which is sad because he wasn't really happy. You know what I mean? And I just was praying and praying and praying most of our marriage, I was like, should we get divorced? Should we not get divorced? I promised I would never do that to my kids, but I was like contemplating divorce pretty much our whole marriage. So I was like, that's, you know, not a great place to be. And eventually I got to the spot where I was like, this isn't sustainable. And so I just started praying that either my husband or I would just die, which is a terrible thing to say out loud. But that's how desperate I was, to kind of let you know, like, that's how severe it was. I didn't want to put my children through a divorce. I didn't want to go through a divorce. I didn't want to put my ex-husband through a divorce because I was raised a child of a divorce. Like, it was awful. It was awful. And I just didn't want to do that to my kids. And one day I was just kind of out for a walk and saying this, like, Lord, what am I supposed to do? And I just kind of really felt like he was telling me my kids don't have to have the same experience that I had going through a divorce, having parents that were divorced. And I was like, oh, that's an option. Okay, well, I'm going to do that. And then I just felt like, Lord, if that's really the right thing for me to do, could you please, like, help me know, like, because we had been to therapy. He was like not interested in going to therapy. And I was like, this isn't, because really can't, like, this isn't a good thing for my kids to even be seeing or modeling. And we were out on a pioneer trek. If you know anything about Mormonism, they reenact the Mormon pioneer trek to the Salt Lake Valley as an activity with their youth. Yes, true story. So they like put you in groups of families, and we were a family, and I lost my wedding ring, and I was like, I'm never going to find that. Like, we were out in the middle of nowhere, and I was just like freaking out because I'm thinking this is a sign. This is what God has been like clearly allowing me to say. And everyone is thinking that I'm devastated, like looking for my ring. And I'm just like trying to process, like, is this what God is trying to tell me? It's okay for me to, like, you know, end this marriage and a divorce. And because I eventually realized, like, it's not a good thing to be praying for one of us to die. Like, that's a problem. I have a problem. If that's my solution, that's not a good solution.
Right.
So it took me like about 3 or 4 months. I live about 10 hours away from any of my family, 12 actually. And one of my brothers was coming to visit with a family friend, and he was there. And I thought, well, he's here. I'll have some support, and I can kind of bounce some stuff off of him. I mean, I talked about this extensively with my counselor, with my mom, with, everybody, like, what is the right thing to do? And so when he came to visit, I was able to be like, I really think this is what we need to consider and start talking about. And it just kind of fell apart. And I was eventually invited to read the Bible not very long after that. And I was thinking, that's a great idea because I know the Bible and I read the Bible, and it will be a tool to help me help you see that Mormonism really is true. That's really what my stance was. I was really that confident in my faith. But we were reading in the New Testament, in Matthew specifically, and they come upon the passage of the woman or the Pharisees are giving Christ this example of the woman who marries the 7 brothers, and they each successively die, and she doesn't have any children. And so they say, in the heavens, whose is she? And Christ responds like, you fools, basically. Don't you know you're neither given or received in marriage in the heavens, but you're as the angels. And I was like, something about reading that time, I knew I had read that. I knew I had read the New Testament, I don't know how many times, but just something about that time was like, 1 minute. Like, this is Christ himself speaking.
Yeah. Give me a second. Let me go over this.
Eternal marriages. Yes, I was like, I literally was like, hold on. I just need to pause. Like, just like 1 second, because I knew, like, in Mormonism, you're taught families are eternal. That's a huge foundation for the faith. That's a huge draw for converts, for people, for them teaching people to come to Mormonism is you have a family. It's eternal. It's yours. Your marriage is yours forever. Your kids are going to be yours forever. You have this huge lineage. They use the scripture of Elijah, that he will turn the hearts of the parents to the children, the fathers. That's what they use as that scripture to let you know that that's what eternal families are for. And genealogy work. You're supposed to be doing all this genealogy work. So your family can be, they call it, every seat at the table can be filled, because you have a table in heaven that represents your family, and every seat is your family, each member being at that table. So there's like a very popular, this is kind of how this religion underhandedly tells you have to comply. Like, there are signs that people get for their home that says no empty seats at our table. Like, in your dining room, you would have that, or in your living room. So like, it's constantly this message of you have to follow and keep this religion, our culture, our standards, because we can't have any empty seats at our table in heaven. So, and if you don't follow, then you won't be at the table. So just for an example there of like that messaging undercurrent. I know, right? So,
That's pretty heavy of
yeah.
like letting
So
you like think about whether or not be like, well, if you stop this, right, you're going to be, you know what I mean, you're stopping the process of understanding your religion, or you're stopping the process of continuing the community or your family, or there's like heaviness that relies on that type of responsibility.
Yes. Yes. It's just like, again, nobody's saying that, but that's the underlying message of it. So it's that kind of teaching that you grow, talking about growing up in a Mormon home. It's those kind of messages that you continually learn to adopt. You know, they talk about a biblical worldview. There's for sure a Mormon worldview. And that's what just kind of one of those pieces of the Mormon worldview, if that makes sense. So,
Hmm.
um, I read this passage and I'm like, this is Christ himself saying this. And God doesn't change, like his message. He doesn't change. He's the same yesterday, today, forever. I know that's true. And now Mormons do not believe Christ is God. Just also a side note. They believe he's the son of God, like as in a spirit child of God, not God himself. So they believe in a polytheistic theology about God. So they're three separate, distinct beings. So I'm like, this is completely contrary to the doctrine of Mormonism and having eternal families. And like, God would never tell one group of people that they weren't going to have an eternal family or have the ability or possibility, and then tell another group of people in a different time, give them what they called updated modern day revelation, that then they would have access to a promise. So I just was like, for the first time, that was the very first time I thought, I think I might be wrong. And I just was at that point, like I said, I was just so desperate to find God and to be close to him and to be where he wanted me to be and to be on the path, that I literally was just like, anything he had, I was open. I was gonna, no, I did not think it would ever point me away from Mormonism, but I was willing and open to anything he wanted to teach me. And so I think that really was like, he just had my heart at that point. He really just had my heart. And I didn't know it, but like looking back, I can kind of see how he prepared me to receive all of this as it did come. And then it just felt like the floodgates opened and I couldn't get enough of him. There's this psalm that says, my soul thirsts for you like a parched land. And that's what I felt like. I felt like I had been spiritually starved my whole entire life. And now all of a sudden I had it and I saw like what it was. And of course it didn't all come at one time and it still, he continues to teach it to me, but I just couldn't get enough of it. I just completely immersed myself in the Bible. I found a Mormon church in Salt Lake, which is very hard to do. Actually.
Okay.
Not a lot of not a lot of non-LDS churches here,
Yeah.
but they're good efforts here. I started going to this other church. I started going to like these studies to help people coming out of Mormonism, because most of the non-LDS churches here are here to evangelize to Mormons. So there's a lot of classes and resources specifically for Mormons coming out of Mormonism. And I just wanted to know what I knew he was real. I'd had enough experiences with him in my life that I was like, if I'm really going to leave this religion, I'm not leaving God, because I know God exists. I want to be where God is, and I just want to know him and I want to follow him. So I wasn't going to give up on God, but I was like, it took me a minute to fully let go of the whole religion, the whole Mormonism thing. And that was a process, but it was really good. It was really good.
Was there any backlash from the Mormon community when you had started to go towards another direction?
It all coincided with my divorce. So it's hard to say like what was backlash specifically for me leaving the religion. From my ex, for sure, it was a lot of backlash about that. From everyone else in my community, it was hard to say like if it was that or if it was the divorce. But I literally lost my entire family, my community, I went from full-time mom of 5 kids, one of whom is deaf and special needs. Like I did everything in our whole house. My husband didn't even know our kids' teacher's name. Like literally did everything. And then I had to share 50-50 custody with him. And so then I went to full entire weeks without my children when I was completely alone. And that, yeah, it was a huge adjustment. But I kind of felt like God was like, now that I have your attention, because I didn't have anything to do, I didn't have anyone to distract me. I literally went to nothing but myself in the quiet. And so I was able to just really spend a lot of time with him. And he taught me a lot of really great things that I learned about how to be alone with God, which was just had been an invaluable experience, but it was very, very hard for sure.
Yeah, there's a way, and I've been through it too. Where
Mm.
it's at your breaking point, right? Your breaking point
Yeah.
where you have to surrender, and there's no other
Hmm.
way to do it but to give in. Now, it's not necessarily a bad give in. It is the sense of being down
Yeah.
and out, and it's almost as if Jesus is sitting there patiently waiting for you, not in a bad way, but to crumble, because he does say that he'll
Hmm.
take you at your worst. The patience of somebody, just
Hmm.
just think about that. The patience of somebody to take you at your worst, to let you make all the mistakes that you want to make, to go through all the things that you know you shouldn't be doing, the other side knows you shouldn't be doing, and then just sitting there patiently waiting so that he could still take the broken you in.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It was very healing. It was, and I learned a lot about um, what it means for him to be my healer. Like I actually went back to school to get a degree in biblical theology and just learning about worship. I was like, my mind was blown because like those are not things that you do. Worship is very, very different in the Mormon world. So just learning like very basic things about understanding the nature and identity of God. I went through a class about understanding the difference between Mormon theology and biblical theology.
Mm.
And it's just so good. It's so mind blowing because there's so much. You don't realize how much there is until you start to dig in it. And I had a friend that was like, everyone I know who reads anti Mormon literature ends up leaving the church. And I was like, I read the Bible. Like, so
Yeah.
I say now the Bible is in its essence anti Mormon because it just doesn't correspond to any of the doctrine once you take out all of the Joseph Smith translation of it. There's just none of it is the same. So,
There's a record-breaking number of people in this world who are fleeing to Jesus, and it's not a shock.
mhm,
There's a lot of people, and I'm not knocking other religions, but there's also a spiritual connection. So when people say, "What are you?" and then, they try to label you under a religion,
mhm,
when was the last time somebody asked, "How's your relationship with God?" or "How's your relationship with Jesus?" It's
yeah,
completely different from religion. It's completely different.
yeah,
And the amount of people that I've
yeah,
seen nowadays that I would never expect to go to Jesus, like friends of mine who I've hung out with them for years, and they say, I don't know if I believe. And it's like, okay, like, now I still hung out with them. They were still, now they go to Bible study before work or during work, or, because they're in such a good niche of a job run by Christians, run by people who believe.
mhm,
And, he even told me, he's like, dude, like, parenting is better. My life with my, fiance is better. Like, everything has gotten better. And these are things that I would have never thought, that would happen for certain people in my life, and it's just like, because you have this mindset of looking at somebody and be like, yeah, they're pretty, I want to say close-minded, or maybe just think a different way. But then God can do anything. So
truly. I mean, praise God. It's amazing. It really is amazing what he does. And that is like nothing is too hard for the Lord. I love that so much. Nothing is too hard for the Lord. So
I mean, he made the earth in 7 days, so that's pretty. I mean, he made everything in 7 days.
yeah, yeah, he did. It's so good. It's so good.
So my
My kids
question.
are so my ex-husband is oh go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. You can continue. I will ask this question. Don't worry.
I just was gonna say that my ex-husband is still very Mormon. And so my kids are now seeing, like I sat my kids down and just said, hey, we're not going back to church like ever again, mom. And my girls were teenagers and they're like, yes, like they've never really loved that. But I said, but we're not giving up on God.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, they were very excited. And so I was like, but we're not giving up on God. We're still going to go to church. We're still going to learn about God. We're still going to worship. We're just going to worship the true God. And their dad, of course, is like, what are you doing? You're like confusing them. You know, it's been very difficult. My little boys are 10 and 7 now, but at the time they were 7 and 4. And so my oldest son was coming up on his 8th birthday. In Mormonism, you are getting baptized on your 8th birthday. It's a huge deal. There's a lot of community like pressure for you to be baptized on your 8th birthday. And I was like, no, you have to have both parents' consent now, finally, for children to be baptized. And I said no. And that was very hard for him to understand. But that was what I told him was that this isn't about choosing a religion. This isn't about choosing your mom or your dad or about making your mom or your dad happy. This is about you understanding how to build a relationship with the true God. And you can't build a relationship with God if you don't know who he is. So it's my job to give you information. It's your dad's job to give you information, but ultimately you're going to have to decide what's really is the truth and how are you going to build that relationship. And it's still not it's still very hard for him because he wants to please his mom and he wants to please his dad. But I'm like,
Yeah.
eventually you're going to have to get to a spot where you just want to please God. So
Yeah, and you know what? I'll be honest with you. I was raised in a Catholic family, and there was something about it my entire life that I just saw it as it didn't make sense to me. It didn't. It just didn't. Right? You would be in church. It would be repetitive, and in my head registered as 10 to 15 minutes of this was a lesson, right? Everybody would sit down. But before that, there were two scriptures that they read. And then you would stand up and then you would sit down. And then you would stand up and you would sit down. And then they would read another one. You would stand up and you would sit down. And then you would stand up, sit down, and they would go through their spiel, whatever it is. And they would give you whatever the lesson is through those gospels, right? But then you would stand up and then sit down, stand up and kneel. And then you're regurgitating what they're telling you to say, and it just didn't seem natural. It just didn't. It just in my head, I'm like, why are we following the leader here? Why are we doing Simon Says? Why are like that's what my mindset was, and at a young kid, this is what I was thinking. And then you all get in line and you'll go get communion, and you all, and I'm just like, and when I had the mindset to, or when I was older, to be like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. Like this is very odd. And I started going to
mhm,
Bible study. Bible study was completely different because I'm actually learning about it. It's
mhm.
everybody's in somebody's house. These Bible studies got so packed. People were lined up down the stairs of this
Oh,
person's house. And I'm like, this is wild.
no.
And I still to this day, you're talking about people who were in gangs raised in some of the toughest cities too, showing up to this one person's house. That's when I knew something was different. That's why I was like, okay, this is different. There's something moving. There's something stirring right here. And I'm still friends with these people in Nashville, Atlanta, California. Just they've moved out. They've gone their ways. Florida. They're everywhere, and I still stay in contact with them because they've had a change in their life, and we're
Mhm.
brothers and we're sisters like forever now. That doesn't change.
Yeah.
So I can relate to that. It's different when you start to please God. It's different. It doesn't matter what. Well, you really should be doing this. You really should be blah 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 blah. You hear it, but it's just like your
Yeah.
focus is. forward and on God.
Right. Yeah. Yes. And then he just compels you. It's literally like the craziest thing. It's not about living this checklist. It's about just like, okay, God just humbles you. It's like he just is like reminding you,
Yeah.
hey, there's this little thing you have that you need to kind of take care of. And you're like, oh, and there's just things that you just no longer have a desire or a taste for or an interest in. It's like, it's really the new creation that Paul talks about. It's like completely having a totally new heart. Like he says, take your heart of stone and turn it into a heart of flesh. And, you know, truly, truly desiring just wherever God wants you to be, whatever he wants you to be doing. Not like it's easy or anything like that, but not without
Yeah.
like the emotion of like, okay, this is work. It's work, but it's so fulfilling. It's so fulfilling. And it's not because you're trying to earn your way to anything, but just in like I want to be closer to him. I want to get as close to him as I possibly can get.
Yeah. I want to ask, so that whole transformation, right? From going from that aspect to, the capital T truth, the God that you see now, right? And you understand a little bit more or have that personal
Yeah.
relationship with. How did that push you into the coaching status that you're at now?
Mm. Mm. I really wanted to be able to support other women at a level that would push them closer to God. And so in order for me to like really have that, I felt like in order to do that, I felt like I had to have a very personal, close and clear understanding of God and his word and his truth and everything about him. And really at the core of it is, women in our nature, we just want to be loved. That's really what every woman is looking for. She wants to feel whole. She wants to feel seen. She wants to feel accepted. And that's what so many women are craving from a marriage or any, relationship with a man, right? But if you don't understand the love and the wholeness of God, you can't even accept or recognize it in a relationship with a man on this earth. And so that was what God started teaching me about was my identity as his creation. As what does it look like? What does his love look like? What does his love feel like? What does his love even mean? I saw so many times about Ephesians 5 says you should love your wife as Christ loves the church. Husbands are to love your wife as Christ loved the church. And I'm like, what does that even mean? What does it mean to be the bride of the bridegroom? What does it mean to be his wife? What does it mean for Christ to be my husband, for God to be my husband in this season? And so I really started developing and understanding that because I think that's really what every woman's really craving. And you can't get that anywhere else. And so that's what really kind of motivated me to just dig a lot more deeper, but also to be really pointed in helping these women because that's just what every woman is really craving. And it's like, if you could just see how much and understand the love of God, like nothing else matters or compares. Like it just
Yeah.
doesn't. And then you stop settling. You stop settling for things. You stop allowing behaviors that can put you in the same kind of a relationship. You stop seeking after like you become like a totally different person. You don't even present yourself in the same way because depending on how you carry yourself and present yourself, you're attracting a certain kind of man. Well, if you really want a biblical, God loving man, you've got to be a biblical, God loving woman. So you can't have something without also providing what that person is looking for. And really, that is like the common denominator there. So I think that's just foundational for everyone to understand. But that's really the focus of my message and the work that I do with Christian women for sure.
Do you think that that kind of goes along with a lot of if this whole idea of not just following but understanding, right, who God is, what
Mhm.
he not
Yeah.
not exactly what he brings to the table, but who he is. Because I would always say, and look, I'm in the same boat as understanding my flaws and cutting off certain things to understand it. You're not going to go into another relationship until with those same things, with those same qualities, until you fix your own habits. You don't fix your habits, well then you're not gonna stop attracting those
Yeah.
people that you know
Yeah.
bring those habits. So you're gonna always go into the fall into the same ditch, right? Over and over and over again. It's a constant thing. But having God
Yeah.
and Jesus and understanding that he can move in certain ways, which I've absolutely seen, but on the other end, he can make changes so slightly that can make such a big difference, or he can make big changes that make a slight difference. Like there's two different ways to see it. And I think when people start to actually see who God is through the book, I would always say that it's almost like everybody wants this perfect boyfriend or girlfriend, right? And if there was a book that you could read about somebody before dating them, right? You would do it, right? You would absolutely do it because you want to find out who they are, where they've been, you want to know all of it, right? Well, there's a book called the Bible about God, and it tells you everything about him. And I think that everybody should jump into that because that is the one person who does love you the most, who is always going to love you, who is never going to leave his sheep behind, right? If there's one sheep gone, he's going to find you. He's going to make sure that he can find you. But on the other end, you have to open the book to understand who he is. That's what makes the relationship
Yeah.
between you and him good.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, and I actually love the Bible. It's not just like one really big book, it's 66 books. You have 66 different books to pour through. That feels overwhelming, but I think it intertwines in this really, really beautiful story, but there's so much about how God sees us as individuals, and he treats everyone as an individual. And I think that's really what the beauty of the whole entire compilation of the Bible is that it's not about collectivism. It's not about labels. It's not about a group because there's so many like caveats to every situation. He treats everyone as an individual, and you're not any different. There is something exactly for you in there that you need to learn in the way you need to learn it, in the way you need to hear it. Like I needed to see and hear specifically from the Bible, and I needed to read that verse in Matthew specifically. That's what I needed. But every single person I talked to had something else that spoke to them. And that's what the beauty of it is, because it's not just this big, like, generalization. It's so specific and it's so individual. It never ever loses its ability to speak to you as an individual and help you to see who he really is and how he sees you and understands you. And he knows you so intimately. Like it just blows my mind every day how intimately he knows me.
Yeah, there's so many different aspects of where even small things could just fall into place, but it's the small things that could only work for you. It's the small things that could only work in favor of your schedule, or it's the small that, but everything is pointed towards you. But then if you ever realize that something you're like, well, that didn't just go wrong. That went completely against what I wanted, right? But then you forget that, yeah, it's not all about what you want because that
Yeah.
that little situation of you not getting what you want can affect somebody else in a greater way because they needed that to happen to you in order for something else to happen, and that right there is called God's will.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's no accidents at all for sure. And it's interesting to me, even just like bringing up that, like what you want and what you're praying for is like, did you even ask? I was reading actually, there's this really fascinating story in Judges. I think it's in Judges, but it's talking about a man who takes his concubine and they're visiting the concubine's father. And they're coming back to their home and they have to stop in this city it's in the Benjamites clan land. right? So they stop in the Benjamites' land and they're just going to like camp out in the village square. And a man comes and he's like, you can't camp out here. That's not safe. So he takes them to their house and they go to this man's house and men like swarm the man's house and are banging on the door and like, come out here, come out here. They want the man to come out so they can have their way with him. And this is such an interesting story to me. But but what ends up happening is the man sends his concubine out. They assault and abuse her all night long. She's laying on the doorstep and she's dead. He cuts the husband cuts her into 12 pieces and sends her to all the tribes of Israel, including Benjamin, and says, this is what just happened in the land of the Benjamites among our people. And there's nobody that's repentant. So all the other tribes get together. They send to the elders of Benjamin. They're unrepentant. They're kind of like, who are you to tell us what we should and should not be doing? And so all of these were like, decide to gather together and come to war against the Benjaminites. And so they do. And they lose like 30 to 50,000 soldiers, like just swarms and swarms and swarms over it's the course of like 3 days. They lose 18,000 the first day and 20,000 the second day and 30,000. And every single day they're like, Lord, what's going on? Are we still supposed to be doing this? And he says, keep going. And so after the third day, he says, this is the day that I will deliver you all into their hands or them into your hands. And then like 50,000 of the Benjaminites are killed on the last day. So there's like 100,000 Israelites are slain in this battle. And what I think is really powerful about this is I got this I read the Bible in 1 year by Nikki and Pippa Gumble. And Nikki shares that while they were asking how to go to war, they never stopped and asked if they should go to war. And that's what I think about a lot of the times when I'm thinking about what do I want is not how am I supposed to do this, but if this is even God's will for me, because I've made such a mess trying to pursue my own will. And there's a verse in Romans, I think it's Romans chapter 3, where he says God gives them over to their debased minds and to their own desires because they're so far from the will of God and what he wants that he's like, it's just fine. You can have your own way. And I'm not going to anymore try to save you. You can just destroy yourselves. And I just am like, I don't want to keep destroying myself. I want to know where does God want me to be and what does he want me to be doing? And so I've become very careful, maybe not careful enough. I'm still learning, but to stop and just ask like, wait a second, before I say like, I really want this, I'm like, wait. Actually, Lord, do you want this? Is this even the right thing for me? Because I don't want to be sacrificing and hurting everyone else. It's been a really good lesson for me, but it's very interesting whenever I think about like, what do I want? And people, or when I'm thinking about that, and I think it's just the Spirit changing your heart. Just as you're becoming that more sensitive creature and the more sensitive of him having your heart, it really you just no longer desire to do anything that's going to separate you from him or separate anyone else from him. And I think those are really good lessons that he's taught me recently.
Do you think that is a big stage that people sit on, not asking what God's will is more so than themselves and if they should be doing this, and they're more concentrated on what they are doing if you compare it to the battle, right? Not if we should go to war, but hey, how should I handle this? But instead of asking, should I handle this? Do you think that relates to the coaching that you do with a lot of divorced women?
Yeah, for sure, because a lot of them are in the position of, they've been hurt, they've been wounded, they're now they're post-divorce, they have this scarlet letter they're wearing everywhere they go in every community, and whether or not they were justified or whether or not they had biblical grounds for divorce, as I've seen so many times that it is interesting to watch them. And I think this is just the natural in us, is just the natural innate nature that we battle with, which is our own desire of our flesh and our own imperfections and our own weaknesses and our own just pride and ego. We all deal with that. And so the nature of my coaching is actually to help understand and bring awareness to what are you believing and then how that correlates and shows up in your life. And so it was actually interesting because the first time I read the Bible, I was like, this is just coaching. This is just thought work. Everything that I've learned through my coaching practice and my coaching experience, I'm like, this is all about understanding, taking thoughts captive, putting on the armor of God, taking accountability and responsibility for myself, and holding myself accountable and focusing on God's work in me instead of God, whether or not God is showing up the way I want him to in the world around me. So that really is the core of like all of my coaching, is helping you understand, like, when you stay focused on you and focused on your own story, like God's got everything else. We want to have our hand in everything else. And that's where it becomes so much friction in our life, because we have no control over any of those other things. None at all. And it's like banging your head against a wall trying to make it all happen the way you want it to. Like, how many examples of like Abraham and Sarah? God promised them this posterity, and they're like, well, we're so far down here. Like, maybe we'll just do this on our own way. Or, like there's so many examples like that in the Bible. That is all what we're doing. It's just the human nature condition. Adam and Eve had this perfect, perfect garden in the presence of God. And she was like, well, I'll just take this into my own hands. It has literally been the problem of humanity ever since we've existed. So absolutely applies in all of the coaching it comes into. And it's so, so amazing to see the Spirit work in these women as I teach them how to utilize these tools and implement them from the Bible. How it's full. The Bible is full of all these examples of how to do everything I teach them. And just like, the more confident they feel, the more empowered they feel, the more at peace they feel, the more hope they feel, the more relieved they feel. So like, they're not stressed and anxious and worried and overwhelmed and carrying around all this baggage of like, my ex isn't performing this way or doing this, or I'm not finding the love of my life, or all these external things. It's like, and then they implement it. And it's just like, you can see their countenance and just the Spirit of God working in them as they are transformed just by hearing his truth and learning to apply it in their lives. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild too, because even in Genesis, when he gave us uh, a garden, right, to take care of. And I heard this from a pastor one time, and it made complete sense, like you said, Katie Ann. We took it into our own hands. We got this, like, we'll do this, right? But in reality, he gave us the garden and gave us the instructions of what to do. So for the first time, he gave us responsibility. So this is your responsibility. Okay. And with this responsibility comes work, comes the soil, right? You have to make sure that the soil is good. This is a garden. Things need to grow. They need to be fruitful, and you're in charge of that. But once we go against God's will, all of a sudden things start going bad. And even though it felt so good to do, we still question why, but we really know the answer, but we don't want to say it out loud. Because if we dare say that out loud, right, our ego takes a hit. Is it not?
Yeah. 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 It's very, very humbling to realize you have stewardship. So I will just share this as well. Like, as I'm coming out of Mormonism and I'm like praying with God to like save my kids, like, Lord, like, don't let them be confused, help them, like, protect them. And I have a certain outcome for them, which is to find God the way I found him and to believe in him the way I have believed in him. And they still have a dad, and God is still answering his prayers. And he still has things and desires of his own. And so God just very clearly, literally interrupted me mid-sentence of me like, God, can you just make X, Y, and Z happen? He was like, they are mine before they are yours. And I was like, oh, I know.
A little humbling, huh?
So humbling, so humbling. But there's a very, very fine line of our stewardship. He has given us things to have dominion and power and stewardship over. But at the end of the day, they're still not ours. They're still his. And we have to remember that at the end of the day, it's just in our care right now, but they're not mine. My children, at the end of the day, belong to God, and he knows them just as intimately as he knows me. And he knows what they need far greater than what I know that they need. So trying to like insert myself and be like, no, 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 I need it to go this way is just like so egotistical to say out loud, but you don't realize you're doing that until someone kind of smacks you in the face, you know?
Does that sometimes I don't want to say get in the way, but is it a struggle sometimes when you're coaching a woman and you want her to understand a certain aspect of what you're trying to get through to her, obviously, right?
Mhm.
And do you forget that sometimes that God will take care of it? Or I don't want to say forget, but you're so focused on the now with the person to make sure that they understand the message or what have you, instead of
Mhm.
giving it to God to make sure, because it is that's his daughter, right? That's his daughter.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
do you struggle with that at times?
Yes and no, and this is what God is so good, because He gave me this specific coaching program to find and utilize, and this is literally the foundation of their coaching, is that your opinion is irrelevant at all times, and that's like a core foundation of the teaching and principles of this coaching program. And so they taught you like how to like write down your own thoughts and then be like, my opinion does not matter. So it's just amazing how God prepared me so very specifically to this specific kind of coaching for it to correlate so beautifully with the word of God, and with allowing, like, my job is to show her her mind. And so my job is to help her see what is she believing and what's the story she's telling herself, and then what, if anything, she wants to do with it. And this is just contrary to human nature, because many of them will be like, I want someone to tell me what to do. And I have to train them to let go of asking for my opinion,
Mm,
because then I have to say my opinion is irrelevant. Because at the end of the day, you're giving me, I have an hour every week with these women. And I'm like, I have an hour to understand your entire life, which is not like realistic. That's not possible. There are all these other aspects in this situation and scenario that you're not even sharing with me. So I can't give you advice or know what's best for you, because there's no way for me to know the whole picture. So my job is to remind you that you do know the whole picture, and to help her see that there's more to the story than what she's even acknowledging. And it's just like, again, so correlates with the Bible and the teachings, and the, like, how God wants us to learn, and how He teaches us and reminds us that we have all the answers with Him. And so
mm,
my job is, I remind them that if they want to pretend like they don't really know, they do know somebody who does. And they know how to go to Him, and they know how to talk to Him. And so we even work on developing, how do you even communicate with Him, and how do you hear Him? And so I give them tools and resources on practicing how to even just do that. And that's, so it's just amazing. Like I said, like, you can look back and see how God prepared you in a certain way and
yeah.
with certain tools. And that's the last like 5 to 10 years. I feel like I can go back and just see how He just so orchestrated so many little tiny details I never could have seen where they were going, because it wasn't here.
Yeah. I mean, you don't know. You honestly don't know until you get there, right? So it's
Yeah.
what is if there's obviously people listening to this and they're struggling through something. There's a woman out there. There's many women out there listening to it, and they're in the middle of exactly what you're describing. They're divorced. They're in a dark spot. What is something that you would recommend to them, or that you could give them a little word of advice, if they're not, in your coaching status yet, or something that they could look up to and feel maybe just that little bit much better, to give them just a little bit more hope.
Yeah, I would say that no one's going to give you more hope or comfort or peace than God Himself. So if you're just feeling completely lost, even if you feel like He's completely forgotten you, just to even question that. What are the thoughts? Romans reminds us to take every thought captive. Well, oh no, it's in Corinthians. It's 2 Corinthians 10:5. He says, take every thought captive so that the knowledge of God can be honored. Like, whenever it is that we're spinning or suffering or struggling, there's something we're holding on to that is contrary to the knowledge of God. And that is the most powerful thing I think you can ever learn, is awareness about what you're holding on to that's keeping you from God, because God's not moving. You are separating yourself from Him in some way. And that's where that accountability is. And I give my clients lots of tough love. I love that.
You need it.
But it's hard. It's hard to acknowledge that we're standing in our own way, or standing in God's way. And so that's what I try to teach them, is that there is there are things that you can do again with the stewardship, but a lot of times the prayers we're praying for, we're standing in his way for receiving them, because we're trying to make them happen our way, and the way timing we want, and the way that we want, and the outcome we want. And God's like, I'm trying to give you this, but I'm going to give it to the way you really want it and
Mhm.
is really best for you. And that isn't the way you think it is. And so it's really, you have to be so humble and so just, I think, desperate. You got to be at the bottom of the barrel at some times. And so many of these women really are at the bottom of the barrel, but you don't have to stay there. You don't have to stay there, but you do have to be willing to get out of it.
Yeah. A decision also has to be made, right?
Yeah, I tell them all the time, you're only one decision from a completely different life.
That is such a that is a great, like, line right there. That is a bar that you wanna carry around. You're one decision away. I like that. I like that a lot. Um, Katie, and where can people find you online? Um, I know on YouTube it's Katie Ann Coaching, right? KATIEANNE Coaching at YouTube, right? Is there any other spots that they
Yep.
can find you?
Yeah, I'm also on TikTok. You can find me on TikTok, and I have a Patreon page, and I have a podcast. So you can find me on any podcast platforms. My podcast is Beyond Believing. So
Beyond believing. Awesome. I'll put some of that stuff
mhm.
in the show notes, hopefully that we can put on there. But I appreciate all of your time. And you know, I hope that everything works out for the people that are listening and they can reach out to you, and I think it's a really huge calling for you to go from one side to the other and just follow exactly what God's telling you to do. So thank you for being brave enough to do what you do. And hopefully we will see each other soon in the near future, and we can continue maybe another episode
Yeah,
on how things are going well above and beyond.
sure. I would love that. Thank you so much for having me. I will send you all the links so you have them specifically for anyone that's interested.
Perfect. All right. Well, I appreciate you so much, and thank you for joining the show, Katie Ann, and we will talk soon.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
All right.
If you're a divorced Christian woman ready to rebuild your identity and step into God aligned womanhood, I'd love to walk with you. There are 3 ways that you can go deeper with me. 1, you can subscribe to Beyond Believing Podcast for weekly encouragement. 2, you can follow me at Coach Katie Ann for daily biblical truth and identity work. Or 3, if you're ready for one on one coaching, applications are available at the link in my bio. Let's keep this conversation going. Before you go, please continue to keep my podcast manager, Maria, and her husband, Gunnar, in your prayers as they walk through his cancer treatment. You can find a support link and more information about their story in my show notes. And if you're local to Utah and want to join our single mom community for the holidays, email me at beyondbelievingpodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode in our Godly Womanhood series. Thanks for listening to Beyond Believing.